welcome back to Cast Me to Hell with me, Seb.
And with me, Robbie.
And this week on Friday the 13th, very on the nose, we bring you Friday the 13th, our favourite victims.
Yep, just a little special for people out there, as obviously it's Friday the 13th. I think the last time it was a Friday the 13th, or at least one that we noticed, we did our favourite Friday the 13th moments. So this time, before we do our favourite Friday the 13th victims...
Yes, not the same thing at all. Very different.
Completely different.
I'm sure none of our moments probably included many deaths that we wanted to have it, like that we enjoyed watching, because why else do you watch Friday the 13th except for Jason killing people?
Well, for the riveting storyline.
Yeah,
you know,
the many riveting storylines.
The riveting storyline, the sex arcs that Jason has throughout it.
The sex arcs.
The sex arcs, yeah. You know, there's in there somewhere. I'm
yes.
Sure.
And the way that they slowly turn more into more closer to like just porn.
Yeah, basically.
The way the plot just starts to feel a bit more like, hey, are we watching horror anymore, or you just decide to go make a porn?
Yeah, when are they going to start?
Put Jason in the background, just hanging down.
He just has to be. So legally, they can call it Friday the 13th.
Yeah,
but it's just people fucking.
Yeah,
you know, that's
I mean that probably.
I think that's what the reboot's
I'm almost surprised that some of the late '80s one didn't go. Yeah, fuck it, just go full on penetration.
Yeah. So I mean, it is obviously Friday the 13th. Usually, got to at least watch one of them just to celebrate the day. But we'll get straight into it. Talk about some of our favourite victims and why we like them, how they die. Before I hand over the reins to you to kick off our first one, I will use this as a reminder for the lovely listeners to hit that subscribe button and to please leave us a lovely review. We've got some fun episodes coming up for you, and at the end of the month we've got to kick off our summer slashers with Friday the 13th Part 2. We've done the first one, I think it was episode 8, so that was way back in the day. We're going to go on to the second one, and make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get the episodes as soon as they're out. So, the first victim, over to you.
I'm going with my first one. I'm going to go for Mr. Jimbo Mortimer.
Okay.
Played by Crispin Glover. Crispin Glover.
Crispin Glover, big
Crispin Glover, yeah.
Yes.
In Friday the 13th, the final chapter. I don't know what I like about it. I mean, Friday the 13th, the final chapter, I think is one of my preferred of the franchise anyway. I think because even though they're kind of all like a bit of a, like, as always, they're a bit of a douchey set of guys in there. But always with the part, with the, each of the actors and stuff like that. It's interesting when you get to see an actor who went on to other things in these kind of films, which you've got with, Kevin Bacon and Kelly Hu in Manhattan and things like that, people who's in other ones.
Corey Feldman.
In Final Chapter. Yeah. But what I find interesting is that Crispin Glover in this film, if you know a lot of Crispin Glover stuff, he kind of became this very renowned for almost being this kind of creepy discount Johnny Depp, weird, I don't know how to describe him, but he always seemed like he played a creep in a role after a while. After Back to the Future, he basically only normally played kind of really pale skinned creep dudes. Well, you know what I mean? Or weird characters, or he was in Tim Burton films or things like
Charlie's Angels.
Yeah, Charlie's Angels. That's the one that sticks in the mind of all of them. So what I think is so weird to see him here, and why I think I quite like the character, is because he's oddly charismatic and almost one of the more charming, he's one of the more charming men in the film.
Yeah.
He comes across if he didn't look, the facial, if I didn't look and he didn't have such an obvious clear face and very sharp nose, I'd almost be that's definitely, even though it looks like it, that's not Crispin Glover, because this ain't the dude I've seen in other films later. I do wonder what happened to him.
What happened to
you?
The handsome, youthful boy from Back to the Future.
Not that I'm not saying, so Jimbo is not he's not the peak jock or anything.
No, of course.
No, he is still a bit, somewhat the charming comic relief. He's got the emotional backstory, of course, that BJ Betty, who was his girlfriend, broke up with him just before they've come. So now he needs to try and get off with Tina and
one of the twins,
Trish or something like that.
Yeah,
the twins who are much loved purely for the fact that I believe that they were only cast based on the fact that they I heard a story that Tina and Trish, is it Tina and Trish? I've got
I mean, it's Friday the 13th.
Tina and Terry, sorry. Tina and Terry. They are the twins of the franchise in the fact that one of them went forward to be in the film and got rejected. And then when they found out she had a twin, they said, we will hire you both for this film.
That's a Weinstein move.
Yeah, literally. That's what I mean. It's like, only if you're both in it, and basically you're just going to be there for other sexual nature. Yeah. You are there for someone, hopefully, at some point to get to bone twins.
Yeah, hopefully someone's going to get to plough over you.
Yeah, and it's Harvey Weinstein.
It's Harvey Weinstein. He's like cast himself in this film.
That's it. Anyway, Jimbo, as I said, I think he's quite a charming character throughout the film. I think when he is on the screen, he makes it a little bit more entertaining. And I really like the way he goes out as well.
Yeah, it's brutal, isn't it?
The old going for the wine, where's the corkscrew, getting it through the hand, and then getting a meat cleaver in the face. And it's also the fact that his death doesn't just like kind of end. He's dead, but I love the fact that he's like crucified onto the door.
Yeah.
And that's enough. So she finds him crucified upon the door, like holy shit. And then when Jason comes back through, he basically just tears him down.
Yeah,
it's like the only thing he doesn't do is basically piss on his corpse.
Yeah, just shits on it.
Yeah, just squats down on the way out. That's Jason. But yeah, I mean that is pretty much why I like him. I think it's slightly due to the actor feeling so like he's doing a very different performance than I'm used to seeing from him. But I think he makes a more entertaining character when you've got a lot of stock characters, stereotypical characters. And I think weirdly, not just the BJ Betty thing, but he oddly has like somewhat of a more emotional archer. I do think, again, Crispin Glover at some points comes across as maybe a slightly stronger actor than some of the others. Yeah. And therefore it kind of comes through that he can pull off scenes a little bit more emotional like depth, or a little bit more like even the death comes across a little bit like, oh shit. Like actually the reaction and stuff like that comes a bit stronger than I think you get from some of the stock actors who we get in these films.
And I also think there's something about watching an actor who then went on to be like quite a considerable deal for some time, watching them just die in a horror movie like way before. So I don't know if this was the same year as Back to the Future or the year before, but you have this. Another one that springs to mind as well, you made the direct comparison, Johnny Depp, seeing him die in Nightmare on Elm Street, Nightmare on Elm Street. And then so I started watching Parks and Recs again, and I recently just watched Severance, and I was like, Adam Scott was in like the first straight to DVD Hellraiser, or maybe the last one that was in
in Bloodlines, wasn't he?
Bloodlines.
Yeah, last one in cinemas.
Yeah, and it's just so random just seeing these people like make their debut in a horror movie, die, and then like 10 years later become massive stars. There's something funny about that.
Yeah, it's right. I mean, peak of obviously Kevin Bacon in this one. I won't go into any more of his in case he's on your list.
Okay, but my first one, I assume we're doing 3 as usual.
Yes.
Yes, we probably should have agreed.
Yes, we are doing 3. No, we'll just go with that. I will have my phone handy because I'm not going to lie. As much as I do love these films and have watched them a lot over the years, I have not watched them many of the last few years. So when you throw out a name, I might just be like, who the fuck?
That's fine.
Because there's a lot of stock characters.
There are a hell of a lot of stock characters. And I like a lot of the stock characters. But my first one, and this is a character I have a very interesting relationship with. And that's Creighton Duke.
You got one of mine. That's one of mine. Creighton Duke's one of mine.
So weirdly enough, Friday the 13th Part 9, or not even Friday the 13th, Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday. Yeah. Well, it was the first Friday the 13th film that I have ever watched. And then I went on to watch Jason X. And I mean, there's this, Creighton Duke's this mysterious kind of like bounty hunter who wears this cowboy hat, who's got this really, he's got this dark, long history with Jason. And you can tell that they kind of they were like, maybe base it on Danny Glover. That's kind of the vibe we're after. And I thought he was this like main hero throughout, or main rival to Jason throughout all of the films. So when I went back and I started watching them, every film I was like, Creighton Duke's coming. Creighton Duke's about to come along.
When it's coming. When's he going to be the hero?
When's Creighton Duke coming?
Yeah.
And every opening I'd be like, this is finally Creighton Duke's coming. You were seeing a young Creighton origin story. And no, it didn't. So I feel like he's this character from this like alternate timeline where he was Tommy Jarvis. You know?
I mean, that's the thing. Like, the Jason Goes to Hell is just the most dog shit. Like, I think it's such a bad one. It's like the jumping through point. It makes no fucking sense. Majority of it. It's so fucking weird. I mean, the one thing is that Creighton Duke, at least when he does die, I think he's the only character that gets the actual Jason to kill him. Right. Like, everyone else is like gets possession based people.
Yeah, I think so. Because I remember watching it and being like, what the fuck? This is a Jason Voorhees. This is an old coroner just killing people. Like, this is dog shit.
It is so bad.
However, Creighton Duke is an absolute dog. And when we were playing, Friday the 13th, the game Rip Dog, I was always like, mate, I hope you could come in as Creighton Duke.
Yeah, when are you introducing?
Yeah, when's Creighton Duke?
I'm literally surprised because. Like you said, like seeing like that, quite a lot of people, oddly, I believe I've heard, have literally saw Jason Goes to Hell the Final Friday was one of the first one they actually saw in the franchise, and I think that's because it was the one that was made like out of studio, like a different studio. So I don't know if when DVDs were at their peak and stuff, I always remember the one in the like the bargain £1 ones where the films that were like either like just absolute dog shit, or the ones where studios had basically they'd been made on a separate studio and now that studio were defunct, so they'd sell them. And Jason Goes to Hell was always on that £1 bin of sale. Like Night of the Living Dead was always on that. Not comparing those. That's like one of the greatest with one of the worst.
One of the most dog shit.
But it was made a studio that like the ownership was like on the public domain, like basically like at that point. All of these like really dog shit films. I always remember looking at that. It wasn't the first one I watched, but I remember always looking at that, going, "Why is that £1?" And then I found out because I think I only properly watched that one a couple of years ago. Oh, really? I'd never seen it. I'd gone through all of the Jason films except for that one. I'd never seen Jason Goes to Hell.
I haven't watched it
because I had a box set, and that only went up to Manhattan, I think.
That's the one I borrowed off.
And then I had Jason X, and I had Freddy vs. Jason, obviously, questionable whether you think that's part of the franchise there. I'll come back to that. But yeah, it was always that one that I just never got. I'd never bought it for that £1, even though as a kid I'd looked at it a million times and been like, I couldn't spend that £1. Something stopped me, and I know why.
Yeah, something stopped me.
I now know why.
Wise business move.
But Creighton Duke probably was enough reason to do it.
Creighton Duke, and he is the man, and he gets a death that I always loved doing in the game. The bear hug, crush the old spine. The one thing I will say about Jason Goes to Hell is when you do see Jason, he looks fucking class. And I remember watching it when I was about 9, 10 maybe, and thinking like, fuck, Jason Voorhees looks badass, and then he just got blown up and some old man ate his heart. And I was like, I don't know what this is.
It's mad. If you watch the trailer for that film, I remember watching the trailer. If you watch the trailer for that film, it is literally mad that like They basically have just tricked people into like the film, because it literally is like, it looks like it's the most badass Jason film ever. It's got the SWAT team, it's got them coming in, it's got fights, it's got explosions, it's got Jason there in the middle, and literally they've used basically the only couple of shots of Jason in the film is all that's there. There's none of this whole like other people and stuff like that. It literally just looks like Jason's going to war against a whole army.
Oh my god!
And then you're like, that's amazing. And then literally it's like you start the film, it's like, he fucking got blown up. What?
Blown up.
That it. Like that was Sean Cunningham's new way of bringing the franchise together. We'll have him have a weird little ass worm.
Some ass worm that tries to go into his own descendant. Which,
anyway, this is on the victims, not on the we are underprivileging the victims of these films by not discussing
them. So that's
Creighton Duke was one of mine. Okay. I will change another one. Although I will say I have. Just for Creighton Duke, I love the line, and I got it here. Like, he has the weirdest fucking lines in that film.
Yeah.
Like, he has one when the reporter goes, I'm going to say a couple of words, and I want you to say the first thing that comes into your mind. He says, Jason Voorhees. And then Creighton Duke turns around and says, that makes me think of a little girl in a pink dress sticking a hot dog for a donut. That's a line from the
film. He's so unhinged.
He's fucking weird. He literally is like, the guy who played him just like, do you want to read the script? Nah.
I'm Creighton Duke.
I'm just going to fucking do it. I'm Creighton fucking Duke.
Creighton fucking Duke. He's the man. So Rip, Crate and Duke.
Rip, Crate and Duke. Okay, I'm going to say my own one for later then. I'm going to go for, and I guess a little plug for upcoming episodes. So we're actually going to cover this one very, very soon for our upcoming Summer Slasher episodes.
Okay, interesting.
So I have chosen what is, I think, one of the few characters that I do think is somewhat interesting in that film, and that is Mark Jarvis.
An absolute Chad.
I love Mark Jarvis. I don't know why I love Mark Jarvis, but I just think out of everyone, he's got that charm everyone else wants to be. One girl just wants to fuck him the entire film. I can't actually remember what her character is right now off the top of my head, but she's just gunning for it. She's seeing everyone else about to get pipe, and she's just like, does that pipe work?
Yeah.
Is that pipe gonna
Does
get
it work?
And then she goes off for fucking ages and then comes out. I don't want to talk too much about it because, again, Friday the 13th Part 2 is coming up at the start of our Summer Slasher season, so I'm not going to go too much into what happens in the film or her. But Mark Jarvis, I just think, is just a really fun character with all those. I'm going to keep this brief because I'm not saying there's loads to the character.
No.
There's not.
But there's a charm to him, isn't there?
There is a charm to him. Out of all the counsellors, and there's a lot of stock characters in that film, a lot of ones, even when they do have lines, you're still like, you're basically just a dude in a hat, right?
Yeah.
You know who I'm talking about.
Exactly. Yeah, your whole thing is...
Anyone else who loves Friday the 13th Part, or has watched Part 2, just knows what I'm talking about.
You're supposed
we
to...
will delve more.
You're supposed to look like a street urchin. That's what your character is.
That's you.
I fucking hate that guy.
But yeah, it is weird because obviously the franchise, a different issue, but a lot of those films had, went on to crazy amount of like, it's weird to have the fact that they actually had like a weirdly inclusive part of a guy in a wheelchair. I'm not saying the guy actually is in a wheelchair. I have no idea if the actor is disabled or not. But it's was a weird like move to have suddenly like not in a bad way, but in a film that went on to be such an exploitative franchise to then be in the second one to just be like, yeah, this is us being like, let's make sure we're being sensitive here, which is weird. And then, I say that, then he gets a fucking like...
we're kidding.
We're going to basically put a sword through his face.
Yeah.
I can't actually... Is it a sword? What
it's
is
a
it?
Machete, isn't it?
Machete is the machete, yeah. The classic machete shows up as well. Mark Jarvis is one of the... Because it's not the standard of all of the deaths in the film, but the machete to the face and then the rolling back. I don't know why. There's something iconic about that death to me.
Yeah.
Out of the early of the franchise. Like, that one always stood in my brain of like the machete through the face, the rolling back as that death. I just thought was class.
And I'm sure in the final chapter when they're kind of doing a quick recap of Jason's kind of reign of terror, because obviously Part 2 and 3 are set like a day from each other or so.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure Mark's death is in that kind of highlight reel,
yeah,
and it's so iconic seeing him roll down the stairs.
It is, yeah. Probably for wrong reasons.
Probably, yeah, probably.
Inclusive, but also exploitative.
Inclusive, but yeah, exploitative. Like...
They literally, I think they came up with the wheelchair first, and then went, that'll be a cool death. Guess we've got to put someone in it.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Exploitative, but at what cost?
Right, and you're number 2.
So, I think this is going to be another one of those ones which will make some people potentially be like, who are you on about? Because they kind of are a stock character. But it's Sissy Baker from Part 6, Jason Lives. Interestingly enough, all of the kills or the victims from mine were from 6 onwards. A little teaser for you.
Oh yeah, I did just Google that.
Yeah, you probably know off the top of your head.
Yeah.
But she's this like super cute, really bubbly character throughout the whole of the film, and I feel like there's some added menace in Jason Lives because it's the first time that there's kids at the camp.
Yeah.
Usually it's all like they're trying to set it up X, Y, Z, but this time there's actually kids there, and there's just this brutality about Sissy's death that just makes you think like, fucking hell, it's so rough, so I think there's like, they're in this cabin at night. It's her and one of the other counsellors. Jason is up to no good. He's cut the telephone lines off, and
Jason, no good.
Jason's just being a sly boy up to no good. and Sissy thinks that there's somebody outside of the window playing a harmless little prank. So she says to the other woman that's in the bed, like, "Oh, what should we do? Should we, give them some back?" She pours like a can of Coke or Sprite over, something like that.
Yeah.
And then she gets yanked out of the window.
Yeah, hers is a fucking class. It is a great death.
And then she just gets slammed to the ground, and her neck just gets spun fully round. And usually, like, the neck break.
I mean, this is almost the defining one when it properly went into the camp, didn't it?
Yeah.
Like, Jason Lives is like that, because this is like your favourite one, isn't it?
Jason Lives. This one onwards. Usually I do.
It is when they fully embraced 80s camp and went fucking go for it.
Just do whatever.
So the whole twist is a little bit like OTT, but it's also like fucking like that's so cool.
Yeah, and there's some brutality because you just hear like this slow crack.
Yeah,
it's so effortless, but you see like the expression on her face when she gets her neck broken, and you're like, "Fuck."
It's really. Yeah, I was going to say I remember that one purely because I remember of the effects being quite impressed by the fact that they kind of. Because I swear they go from one fake dart and then they've obviously made a second one to give an expression. And the way that it works, I was going to say, it's one of those, like, there are some deaths across the first Friday the 13th franchise where you look at the practical effects that they did for it and you're like, fucking hell, that's class. That's such good practical effects.
And I feel like, from the fourth film onwards, I feel like they start to embrace the kind of weird and the kind of, the slightly kooky characters. Like, he's not on my list, but I will give shout out to the the prototype hipster from Jason Takes Manhattan, who looks like he would be like the frontman of the Smiths. He's got like the video camera, he's got the big thick glasses, the knitted sweater. And I was thinking when I was doing the prep for this, I was like, Jason Takes Manhattan is kind of one of those films that everybody shits on because it's set on a boat. But it actually has like a lot of the characters in that and the victims are actually quite funny and actually quite like a lot more character than just like guy who looks like a street urchin from part 2.
Yeah, I know. I really enjoy some of the characters. I think people find it weird because it's like Jason Takes Manhattan and it's more like Jason travels to Manhattan.
Jason travels to Manhattan.
Then it is like fully takes Manhattan. He's not actually in Manhattan for that long before it gets down the sewage.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like it's that, but it's. I mean, to be fair, anyway, it doesn't matter. Any film where someone's head gets literally like punched off is fucking class. Anyway, that's the main death of that film, but it's fucking class.
Well, over to you for the final victim.
So I literally asked you whether you would consider this to be part of that. Now I obviously do because it's still part of the franchise. It's just not called Friday the 13th. It's from Jason X.
I mean, Jason Voorhees is in it. It's
it's
part of the franchise.
It's a direct follow-on anyway. Like, it does link to the previous films. It is part of the Friday the 13th. It's just not called Friday the 13th Jason X. And my character is Sergeant Brodsky. Or Elijah Brodsky. He's the one that goes to battle with him right at the end for the final part of the film.
Now, I haven't watched this film for some time. And obviously, it came out in 2002, maybe?
Yeah, I'll give you that. Here you go. I've got a picture on my phone.
Because in my head, and I don't know whether I prefer this now, but it was Mr. Colin Salmon who played this role.
It was not Mr. Colin Salmon who played this role.
However, you can understand that you need a bold man who plays a.
Well, it's 2001, and you're thinking of Resident Evil. I'm thinking of Mr. Colin Salmon getting cut into cubes.
And I'm sure Mr. Colin Salmon was in maybe Aliens vs Predator as well. Maybe.
I don't think he was. No.
Why?
I think him in Resident Evil just makes you think of him in every horror.
I'm just fan casting.
He might be. I might be wrong. Maybe he is.
I'm sure he is.
You can now search that up and see if he is in that.
I think I'm just fan casting Colin Salmon and in the military role of any kind of military leader of an action film. Mr. Colin Salmon in any early 2000 films. He was in Doctor Who, apparently.
Yes, he was.
Don't watch Doctor Who. I'm a man who's had sex.
He was in Doctor Who literally probably about 10 years or more ago.
He was in Alien vs Predator as Maxwell Stafford. He was in Die Another Day as MI6 Deputy Chief of Staff Charles Robinson, who shares a name with a WWE referee. He was in Punisher Warzone, Blood the Last Vampire.
I'd just like to break in maybe first and say Sergeant Broski is not played by Colin Salmon. He's played by Peter Manash, and he has nothing to do with this character.
But this is my fan.
So he was in Predator, Alien vs Predator. He was in there. Okay, I was trying to remember, but I can't greatly remember who he is in that film. Anyway, it's a good film.
Yeah, it's not.
I mean, it's somewhat in the same vein as Jason X. You've got similarities there, I guess.
Yeah.
But anyway, he is basically, if you're going to do a space film, then you're going to have basically space marines.
Oh, of course.
And he is almost like the tip top of the space. He is the leader of the marines in that film, going after Jason. So after all the shit breaks down, and we've got all the classic class deaths that happen in Jason X. And I'm assuming you've not gone for a Jason X. You've not gone for Jason X. So the class deaths you get, and there are many. If I was picking out class deaths you could get, like freezing her head, and the corkscrew that she goes, when the guy gets thrown over basically onto what is a spiral corkscrew in the air, that kind of thing. But for characters and victims, any character who basically goes, I'm going to fucking go hand to hand with Jason, it's a terrible idea. It's not a good idea, but out of anyone, he probably makes the biggest chance of actually pulling something off in quite a while, since they had telekinesis, basically. Since there was just going hand to hand without any powers. He single-handedly basically holds him off. He has one knife basically, where he's just fucking, I'm going to go at you with these knives. I'm going to attack you. And it all basically ends with him and Jason being shot out into, basically you see them basically arriving on the planet. You get that classic at the end of Jason X where you see basically and I think it's meant to be like an Earth 2 or something like that. And you see them traveling down of the heat, and obviously the assumption is that basically Jason has still managed to survive as Uber Jason, and he is burnt away into a crisp. So his death is not actually, so much that.
Confirmed.
It's never confirmed, but the most likely is, we don't fully get to see it, but we do see them both kind of burst into flames. So the most likely thing is that Sergeant Broski's dead. Now, technically, I guess I could now say, is he a victim when he is actually the one? I'm now questioning myself whether he would count as a victim, because technically he's the one that blasts Jason out into space. Maybe Jason's the victim of Sergeant Brodsky here. But either way, by trying to take out Jason, he ends his life, I believe, is over from being burnt to a crisp while re-entering from an atmosphere, which is probably a horrible, horrible death to have. It's in that not only, if he is still somewhat breathing, his skin is literally being literally melted off of his body. So he gets a pretty fucking horrible death. You don't get to see this one. This is technically an off-screen one, but therefore, by trying to save the world, he becomes a victim of his Jason or his own devices.
By trying to save one world, he dooms another.
He does as well. So that's another thing. Technically, is he a victim or is he a mass murderer?
Because I can't remember why they get him off the space station. It's been a while since I've watched Jason X as well.
What? Why do they get Jason off the space station? I'm sure it's just because a lot of it takes place in the final hang. Again, I have not just rewatched the film, but I'm sure it's literally they have to basically, it's the classic we're having this final showdown, and he basically gets him inside of the the hangar, the pressure tube, and basically just goes fuck it. But I can't remember. I'm sure there's another character involved in that part as well that helps with doing it. He's just do it, gone. But anyway, just for his character anyway, it's a pretty badass sacrifice at the end.
It is, and I guess I will I will wrap up with
Colin Salmon.
with Colin Salmon
by reading the rest of Colin Salmon's IMDb page.
That's what we've come here for. Because obviously this is Colin Salmon me to hell.
My favourite moments of Colin Salmon.
Yeah, my favourite Colin Salmon moments. it is Julius.
I love how anyone in like certain countries in America, like he's a very like he is somewhat like, but he's mainly known in like for Britain, and then you see him pop up in films like, what's that British guy doing in like all these? He's almost like before you saw like a ton of British actors in like now British actors are everywhere. We get most of our roles, most of your roles now, but back then it was still kind of like you'd be like, hey, that guy's only like in occasional British stuff, and now he's in all these low-level action sci-fi films from a certain period. You're like, why the fuck is he doing that? So I love the fact that people at home are going, who the fuck is Colin Salmon?
I love that.
Do you watch EastEnders? He is now in that.
Is he?
Yeah, he's been in EastEnders for like almost 2 years now.
Fucking class.
Yeah.
I do love Colin Salmon.
Is it a step up or a step down? You decide.
I'm just fascinated by him as an actor because he I don't get in what world Colin Salmon, a very well-spoken Englishman, is this rough, gruff military leader. He almost does roles that another actor that people probably won't get unless you're British. He almost does roles that like Vinnie Jones should be doing. You know, like we need a really tough British guy for this.
He got replaced by Idris.
Maybe
Big Idris came along and they were like, that's a gruff Brit. Like that's
Big Idris is like
big.
Big Idris has some like fire to him. Colin Salmon is the kind of guy you expect to like be into horse riding. You know, like
playing a bit of polo
and living on like a manor.
He makes a fine cup of tea.
Yeah, not blasting aliens in space.
Yeah,
you know?
He got those roles. I think we've talked more about Colin Salmon than we have probably about some of these characters at this point.
Well, I'll move on to our final one. So obviously this is the Colin Salmon podcast, and I will use this as an opportunity to remind you yet again to hit that subscribe button, just to tease them a little bit before I talk more about Colin Salmon. We are going to be going into our summer slashes at the end of the month, and we've got some real fun stuff planned. So hit the subscribe button. We have teased them with my final one, and that is Julius from Friday the 13th, Jason Takes Manhattan. I did have another guy. I was honourable shout out to Eddie from the New Blood Part 7, who's the weird sci-fi nerd who, has a crush on a girl and then gets used by her and then gets, stabbed in the throat, and he's talking about all this weird stuff.
Oh yeah.
He is a good lad. But there's just something about Julius who...
Yes, I did give away one of your deaths. I gave away your death.
But he's got... the death is...
Shocker. If you haven't watched Friday the 13th, we are here spoiling all of it.
Yeah, if you haven't watched Friday the 13th, Part 8, the brash young man...
It was made in 1989, so, I'm not saying we're past spoilers territory, but,
Yeah. The brash young character who tries to box Jason... It's not going to go well. So yeah, I think he kind of comes off not as like a full antagonist, but he comes off as a bit of a bell end. You see this scene of him as like a middleweight boxer, and he's battering some guy, and he comes off as being like very brash. And then when shit kicks off, and they're like, somebody's killing people on the boat, we think it's Jason Voorhees. Yeah. He's just like, oh fuck, I'll just batter them, you know? Like me and the boys will take care of them. Yeah, we'll just go to town. And then when they finally get to Manhattan, when they get to Manhattan for the last 10 minutes, he tries to spark Jason out on a rooftop. And it's so fun, all the whole time you're just thinking like, why?
Yeah.
Like, why are you doing
this? Well, I guess a link between my last person, a man who decided to basically go to fight them, except he was a trained Marine who had many pieces of equipment in space, including his knives and guns, and they'd already battled with him. And then we've got this one dude who's just like, I'll do a bit of middleweight boxing, mate. Yeah. I'm gonna fucking, you're twice the size of me, and
I'm dead.
Yeah, and you'd be more of a heavyweight, but fuck it.
Yeah. And it's just so good. And then Julius is just getting like
the head flies off and like lands in a bin.
In a bin.
Yeah.
And it's so good. And there was this was a kill I used to love doing on the game, just fucking nailing someone's head halfway across the map.
Rip Friday the 13th
the game. It's just so good. I think he's a great character because a lot of the times you have these people that you don't want to die. the Sissy Baker and the Crispin Glovers. But for all of those, you get a character where you're like, I kind of want to see you die. You know? There's one, shout out to another victim. I can't remember her name, but I think she's in the New Blood. And she, is this like nerdy girl, and she's really self-conscious, and she gets all like dressed up to go to the party, and she's really feeling herself. And then it's just like, just have Jason chase her through a barn and kill her. It's like there's a bit
of
just do it. Why not? For every character like that, there's kind of one bell end who you're like, I want to see you die.
I don't think I learned enough into the bellends. There's many bellends that you want to die in some of these films, and I don't think I should have gone more for the bellend victim. The one that you don't. I mean, Mr. Duke is somewhat of both.
He's got a foot in being a bellend.
Oddly enjoyable and also a full on like, who the fuck are you?
He's an odd one. So I think that kind of neatly
concludes our little short.
Well, yes, it does. So we hope that you've enjoyed this little list of our favourite Friday the 13th victims. A couple of years ago, we did do our favourite moments. So, if you want to keep the Friday the 13th party going, go and check that out. And at the end of the month, we will be covering part 2 to kick off our summer slashers. We did
do part 1 of very, very one
episode
of our first
8
ever episodes. Episode 8,
wow. And it was quite a deep dive into that as well. So be sure to go and check them out. Remember to hit that subscribe button and leave us a lovely review. And we will see you next week. Take care. Goodbye.